How is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of Beared Down Uncut, the show where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. Today, in episode number 164 of Uncut, we're going to be reacting to the rumors that the Bears are shopping wide receiver Allen Robinson prior to the league's November 2nd trade deadline. We're going to be breaking down whether or not this is the right move for the Bears heading down the stretch with a lot of tough games remaining, and also discussing what the Bears could possibly receive in a trade, including Robinson. Before I introduce myself and my co-host, I would like to say we're trying to put out the most comprehensive Bears coverage on the web this season. So if you haven't already, whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, do us a favor, drop a like, subscribe, follow, and we're going to bring you Bears content each and every day. I am your host, Chris Malpe. Today, to talk about these rumors, I am joined with my co-host, Parth Shaw. Parth, how you doing, my man?
Doing pretty good. Still a little sick, so recovering from that, and a little tired. Had some early classes today, so it's getting cold out, man. Yeah, it's not
Oh,
fun
yeah.
to it's not fun to walk to class anymore. I mean, it was like 35 degrees when I was walking to class earlier today. I was like, nope, don't want to do that. But you got to do what you got to do, and yeah, it's warming up a little bit now that it's 3 p.m. Had some foods and recording some Bears stuff right now. Obviously. Heard some bad news with Khalil Mack today. He won't be playing this weekend against San Francisco, which is a tough break for this Bears defense. And he could also be placed on injury reserve, which would be tough, knowing that the Bears have a tough schedule this year. So some bad news right there for sure.
Yeah, been a day of bad news. I mean, it's definitely getting cold out here in Indiana, Parth. You're right, but I think we're built for it, just being from the Chicago suburbs growing up. But yeah, the news with Mac wasn't the greatest, but we've definitely got some bombshell rumors as the Bears approach the trade deadline. Akeem Hicks was a name that was tossed around a little bit earlier on Twitter, and now we're talking about Allen Robinson. Obviously, the league's trade deadline is coming up next week, and the Bears are rumored to be looking to move on from their disgruntled top wide receiver per Austin Fuges. Robinson, who obviously, as we know, was franchise tagged this offseason, hasn't really been able to get it going so far this season, and that's definitely not entirely on him. There are a lot of limited passing opportunities in the Chicago Bears offense, especially with the current state of the offensive line. But as we know, I mean, we've been talking about Robinson here on the channel for quite some time. I think this drama has been going on since what has to be 2019, so entering year 2, 3 here. And there have been contract disputes between the Bears and Robinson, causing turmoil since 2019. So this is definitely not a new issue. The Bears reluctant to bring Robinson back this offseason, but luckily they got him back on that franchise tag and he was willing to play. But Parth, things really haven't panned out how we've wanted to. We've known for a while that Robinson wants that contract number of $20+ million a year. We know the Bears had been rumored and reported to offer something around $17-18 million a year. Robinson didn't take that at the time. His production hasn't been close to what it's been like in the past. So what do you think? Should the Bears be looking to shop Allen Robinson before this November 2nd trade deadline?
Why not? The Bears obviously don't have a first round pick going into next year. That's not me saying that we're going to get a first round pick for Allen Robinson, but we do need more picks going into the NFL draft. And Allen Robinson sadly hasn't produced this season. I feel like his effort's gone down. I don't know if it's whether he wants to be here or not anymore. And it just doesn't seem right. I don't know. I feel like he doesn't finish his routes. I know you Bears fans see the frustration that we see every weekend on the field with Allen Robinson. It's just something's not clicking with this offense, and it might not be his fault, but having him here is just wasting his time and our time. I feel like at this point. Last year, he was a big part of this offense. He had 102 receptions, over 1,200 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. And then now this year, through 7 games, he's sitting at 250 yards. I mean, the production drop-off is incredible, whether that's due to Fields or Andy Dalton. And then, I mean, we all knew how much Mitchell Trubisky loved Allen Robinson, but we know how good of a receiver Allen Robinson can be and how effective he is. But we've seen him drop off this year, and I feel like it's time to look at some trade offers. I mean, why not? What's the worst we can get out of this, I feel like?
Yeah, I don't think we can blame Allen Robinson essentially for the problems on Chicago's offense. It goes a lot further past
Exactly.
Robinson. It's always going to be tough having a rookie quarterback, and I do still obviously believe that Justin Fields is going to develop and only get better. He was speaking about hoping that the team has a breakout game this weekend against the 49ers. Obviously, his development, his awareness specifically, need to improve. The offensive line that Chicago's put together is one of the worst in the league. I read a stat earlier today about Justin Fields having just over 20% chance of getting pressure within 3 seconds of the snap. That's the highest rate in the league this season. And then obviously the offensive play calling for Chicago just hasn't been there. They've gotten shut out completely in 2 games against
No.
the Browns as well as the Buccaneers, and people could even argue the Rams as well. But Parth, you brought up Robinson's stat line so far. Right now, the leading receiver for the Bears is Darnell Mooney. He's got 27 catches for 345 yards and a touchdown. Looks like it could be a 700-yard receiving year for Mooney. Robinson, on the other hand, not too great coming off of 2,000-yard back-to-back receiving seasons. He's got 23 receptions for 250 yards and a touchdown, and I'm not sure if it was lack of snaps with Justin Fields in training camp or what it was, but we really haven't seen that Robinson-Fields connection that we were all looking for start to cash home yet. So,
I
I
think
almost feel like.
it's got to
Sorry, go
do with
for it.
his separation. I feel like the number one thing that we've seen with Bears wide receivers is that they haven't been able to get separation for Fields. Fields is the type of guy who doesn't throw that many 50-50 balls, and Allen Robinson and Mitch Trubisky gelled together because of those 50-50 balls, or just balls thrown in the area of Allen Robinson. Fields usually likes to throw to the guys who are open, who he knows. You saw it at Ohio State. He found everyone at all times, whoever was open, and I think that's what he was trying to do here in Chicago. And none of these wide receivers are getting open. Even Allen Robinson, someone who's asking for $20+ million. So absolutely, like you said, you got to look to shop him for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a mistake not to do it at this point. The Bears receivers haven't really been able to create much separation this year, and it's unfortunate because Darnell Mooney really seems like the only one who's been able to do so. And the Bears brought in a ton of speed this offseason with guys like Damiere Byrd and Marquise Goodwin. Let me correct myself. But, none of the Bears offensive receivers has really been getting it going. The only thing that's really been getting it going for Chicago is the run game. But for me, it doesn't make much sense to keep Robinson around. As much as I love him and he's been my favorite player on the Bears, I'll still say it to this day. Since the day he arrived in the building, I love how he persevered from that ACL injury, came back, made a name for himself, and now he's about to go get paid somewhere else. It doesn't seem like that's going to be in Chicago. These contract disputes have been held up for a while. He's been on Twitter the last couple of years, liking tweets about leaving and being cryptic about the team. And while that drama has kind of cooled down a little bit this year, it does seem like things are leading towards the two sides parting ways. So if you look at it that way, which I think a lot of people do at this point, it does make sense to trade him and try and get something out of him, because why just let
Exactly.
him walk free when you can
And
grab
free
something for
agency,
him?
yeah.
Absolutely. You can grab draft picks, maybe an offensive lineman, something of that sort, for Allen Robinson, and also move on from his contract. I think all signs are pointing towards this probably being a separation. We'll see if it gets done, though, because the Bears have been reluctant to move on from him in the past. We obviously, as Parth mentioned, Allen Robinson is a great receiver, one of the best high point ball catchers in the league. He has the greatest the greatest catch radius of possibly any receiver in the league. So we're not understating what Allen Robinson's able to do or anything like that. But it definitely seems like parting ways is the direction we're heading in here. Before we close this one out, let's talk a little bit about what we think Chicago could receive in return. I know we've talked about this in the past, Parth, and talked about maybe first, second round picks, but it's a little bit tougher to discuss that looking at how Robinson has produced this year. Obviously, 23 catches, 250 yards, and a touchdown. He's got the production in the past years to be able to back up, for the Bears to be able to back up getting something high in return from him. But this year, the production just hasn't been there. So, ideally, taking a look at how Robinson has performed this year and taking a look at Chicago's needs and possibly where they could look to recuperate draft picks, what do you think the Bears should look for or could receive in return for Robinson?
Well, there are a lot of wide receiver needy teams out there. I mean, I feel like the Baltimore Ravens, despite having Marquise Brown, I mean, he's playing amazing, and now they got Rashard Bateman back. But I think they're a team, if they want to make that push in the playoffs, they could look for Allen Robinson. The New Orleans Saints, they've had injuries at the wide receiver position with Mike Thomas. So I mean, Marquise Callaway's their wide receiver one right now. I think the Saints could be interested in Allen Robinson too. The Jets, any of the quarterbacks with the young teams basically would be interested in Allen Robinson as well. San Francisco. So I mean, there is going to be a lot of people that are going to be interested. So you can definitely, I guess, find a late second round. I think for Allen Robinson, I think that's probably the best you could get right now for a wide receiver. Also, knowing that the wide receivers coming out of the draft have been incredible the last couple of years. So there's a lot of young talent in the wide receiver group next year as well. So I bet a second round pick is something that the Bears could hope for, at least at the bare minimum.
Yeah, Chicago is going to be in the market for offensive linemen next season. That has to be priority number one, and it even has to be priority number two. And without having a first-round pick, you'd assume that second-round pick that Chicago is going to use, at least as of right now, and I'm sure it's probably going to be pretty similar 8 months in advance, unless Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins, once he's healthy, completely blow us out of the water. I think the Bears are going to be using that second-round pick on an offensive lineman, which does make sense at this point. We've seen a little bit of regression from Sam Mustipher at the center, to say the least. And also Cody Whitehair and James Daniels are holding it down, but they just need more depth on that offensive line. Taking a look at what you'd want to get back for Robinson, though, I agree with you, Parth. Late second, third round pick. I don't know if a first is viable at this point, just based on how Robinson has played this year and how much money he's still going to be demanding from whatever his new team possibly could be if Chicago were to deal him. So that's a little bit of a sticky situation. Something I think would be a decent idea, and it might be a long shot. The Houston Texans, it seems like, have been trying to swing Brandon Cooks for quite some time. Maybe you call down there and ask if you could swap those two players. Maybe throw a couple of picks in there on both sides as well. See if the Bears could bring Brandon Cooks up here to Chicago. I know his contract is hefty, and he's been someone who's been injured in the past, but he's someone who runs exactly like a Darnell Mooney. He's had elite speed for quite some time. And maybe if you could just dish Allen Robinson and bring back in someone who could be a viable replacement at wide receiver one, it could take a need off of Chicago's back, but also recuperating a draft pick would be cool. I'm not sure where he's going to end up getting drafted next year. I know he's a really good wide receiver, but looking at what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are able to put together right now, it'd be cool if the Bears could bring in someone like a Chris Olave from Ohio State, someone that Justin Fields is used to playing around. I think that could be a really cool situation as well. But overall, I know the Bears have to primarily focus on offensive line, so maybe they trade Robinson for a solid offensive lineman in a late round pick, maybe something like a wide receiver, a long shot that I mentioned, or just 1 second, third round pick would be fine as well. But it should be interesting to see how this plays out in the next couple of days until the trade deadline comes up, I believe in 6 days on Tuesday, November 2nd. We're going to keep covering it for you guys. Let us know if you're listening in on YouTube down in the comments whether or not you think the Bears should look to move on from Allen Robinson. And thank you so much for tuning into episode number 164 of Uncut. Once again, we're trying to post the most comprehensive Bears coverage on the web. So if you haven't already, drop a like, subscribe, follow, whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We're going to keep coming back to you guys with Bears content each and every day of the week. If you want more content from us, head over to our website, beareddown.com. We're posting columns, articles, and blogs each and every day to keep you guys posted on what the Bears are doing and getting you guys ready for the Bears week 8 matchup with the San Francisco 49ers. If you'd like to find the podcast on social media, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Beared Down. We're going to be giving away a Justin Fields jersey later this week, announcing it, I believe, on Friday. So be sure to head over to our website and enter that giveaway. It'll be free to enter. And finally, even though Parth did just glitch out of the podcast here, you can find the links to his social media as well as my own down in the description. It's another great way to interact with us, and you can see our thoughts on all things Bears, the NFL, and the entirety of Chicago sports. So last words, I guess if I had to say anything here at the end, it's unfortunate with the whole Khalil Mack situation. And as much as I love Allen Robinson, it would be tough to see him go. I'm always going to root for him. But we got some Bulls basketball coming tomorrow. Game got flexed to prime time against the Knicks, the 4-0 Bulls for the first time since 1996. There's a lot to look forward to there. A lot of changes going on in the Blackhawks organization right now. So confusing time to be a Chicago fan. A lot to be hopeful for still on all three of those teams. I know the Blackhawks haven't gotten off to a good start. But the Bears are 3-4. It's not the end of the world. Hopefully they can win this one this weekend. And then obviously, man, the Bulls are turning it up. So a lot to look forward to heading into the weekend. Hopefully the Bears, who are 3.5-point underdogs, can pull it out this weekend against the 49ers to get back to 500. Definitely a game you need to win if you want to be in contention there for a playoff spot in the NFC. Guys, it's been a pleasure to be your host. Once again, my name is Chris Maltby, and Bears fans, as always, do us a favor and stay safe and bear down. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.